Have I got it wrong yet again in my career? I've missed the nuance here. Morning, Simon.
Nick, you haven't got it wrong. I think there is a nuance that the White House is trying to spin here, which is this was all part of a grand plan that the markets failed to understand. I don't think that is correct. If you've got an institution like Goldman Sachs putting out a recession predictor the middle part of yesterday, US time, and then just 70 minutes later doing reverse gears, and they are as connected as anybody on Wall Street, it tells you that it's chaos, basically, within the Trump administration.
We always knew this was likely to happen, Simon. If you look at video recordings of him in the 80s when he was a hotelier and property developer, he's always believed in that. Why the extraordinary level of global surprise that he's carried it out?
I think it is the inconsistency of some of the statements. I think trying to wean the US consumer off China goods, we know he's been a long time hawk on China, so there's been no surprise in that regard. We know that he's trying to reduce the cost of servicing US debt, which is something called the Mar-a-Lago Accord after his private residence down in Florida. That shouldn't be of a surprise. But the blunt way in which he went about doing it last Wednesday was rather inconsistent with some of even the rhetoric in which he teed up that famous piece of cardboard they showed in the Rose Garden. The rhetoric suggested this was very elegantly curated, taking into account lots of factors. And then when actually the algorithm, the calculation was unveiled, it was far more simplistic. And that shook markets because it felt like a very, very blunt instrument to deal with. I think even Trump's political opponents would say that there is an inequity between the trading terms that China committed to when it joined the World Trade Organization almost 30 years ago, and how it has actually conducted trade since.
Now, I was at a lunch yesterday. That bit won't surprise you, but the fact that I can remember some of it might. And a very well-placed source said he needs to do a deal with somebody because that will provide an off-ramp. That will allow him to say, hey, look what I've achieved. I've done a deal with the EU. I've done a deal with Hong Kong. It doesn't matter who the deal is with. Your interpretation of that, Simon?
I mean, that is the most predictable part of that approach. It was clear, I think, last Wednesday, although the tools were blunt, that it would trigger a stream of governments looking to use their diplomatic back channels to try and, in the case of his first term, deals with China on buying more US soya beans was one of the key sticking points, which then he was able to sell back to the agricultural community, part of his base in the United States, and say, look, we've generated a greater equality in terms of that trading relationship. Will that be done bilaterally? And he would want lots of heads of government to come to the Oval Office over the next 90 days to try and offer up some sort of concession. Yes, I think that is the most predictable part of all of that. But where that then takes what remains, even this morning, a 10% flat levy on all imports into the United States, which is the highest level in almost 100 years, is almost impossible to tell.
The tack taken currently by the UK, to borrow that expression, jaw rather than war, is that the right approach?
I think reasonable people can disagree on this one. I think given how we've seen events play out in terms of China taking a very hostile approach and then tariffs being more than doubled from their initial level, it does perhaps vindicate the idea of keeping a low profile and seeing what is possible with a Trump administration that are more open to a trade deal with the UK than the Biden administration ever was.
Final question, the $64,000 question, or in this case, the $5.4 trillion question. That's been wiped off the index. Simon French, what happens next?
A modest recovery in share prices, but I think we may retrace some of the lows that we've seen in recent days. Why? Because, as I just said, tariff levels are still at levels we haven't seen in anybody's lifetime, and that is still a big headwind to global economic growth, and share prices don't like that.
2 points. First of all, when you saw the inauguration, you saw all the billionaires standing behind him, who basically had the front row. They put hundreds of millions of dollars into his campaign. Up to one donor put up to 200 million directly and through his companies. Mm-hmm. So I think, and of course, they suffered a major hit. Yeah,
Musk lost, I think, billions. $8 billion. Bezos, $7 billion. I mean, it is billions.
Paper.
High single-digit billions. What's the point you're driving at?
Well, I'm just saying, I think the first point is I think they called time. They said, hey, we didn't invest £200 million in your campaign to now be standing at an £8 billion loss. That must be the worst investment in history. The second thing is the big picture for this whole position on tariffs is what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to transfer income. He's trying to make a massive transfer of income from the working class and the poor to the billionaires, because he's promised the billionaires a massive tax cut as part of his their reward for backing him. He's cutting Medicaid. He's cutting Social Security. He's cutting Veterans Affairs. So he's taking money away from the poor, and he's also
but he's also promised the poor they'll get their jobs back. I was there when he did it in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but then he was photographed talking to a group of miners, and he was saying to the miners, "I'm going to protect coal because we can't see you guys sitting at desks assembling iPhones, fiddling around with screws and nuts and bolts." So that's the question. Anyway, my other point just at the end.
Briefly. Yep.
Yeah. So by putting on the tariffs, it's highly inflationary. You see what's going to happen to U.S. prices now.
Yes, of
and
course.
If there's inflation, it's good for the rich because companies put up their prices faster than inflation, and they make a fortune.
I don't know if it's quite as straightforward as that. I don't know that inflation is particularly good for everybody because what you call the rich, they still have to pay, although it's much easier for them, they still have to get provisions from the stores, they still have to pay, in instance, their staff. And if they have inflation-linked pay rises, then obviously they're paying more money on their staff at the various companies that they own or try and put together.
If you have a look at, three things that he's laid out to resolve very quickly, the Russia-Ukraine war, which he supposedly was going to get a ceasefire and everything resolved there within 24 hours.
Yep.
That's just died a death,
Sadly.
Completely.
Almost
sadly,
literally. Yeah.
That has absolutely gone off his radar now. Tariffs, I think, don't get me wrong, I think some of the things he's done on other things have been very, very good.
Okay.
But on these major things, he's really, who actually believes anything he's going to say in the future? His next major thing he's going to take on is Iran and their nuclear deal. The Iranians must be sat there thinking, well, no matter what he says, he's not going to do it.
How much has he damaged, whatever credibility he might have had, how much has that been damaged by these last, 7 or 8 days or so?
I think majorly because he's damaged not only his allies, but he's also shown his opponents that does he actually carry through with what he says? And you see a lot of people extremely unhappy within America. People have lost a lot of money on their pensions, everything else. And you just think, was he thinking about the midterms already now?
Lastly, is there anything he can do to restore the balance, to get back the high favourable ratings he enjoyed at one time, or has he trod so far down this path there's effectively no return?
I think he's very quickly going to become a very lame duck president.
Gosh.
And he's going to have his hands completely tied.
Well, then we're in for even more. If they're not even listening to him, he'll get even angrier. We're in for a worse time, lastly, aren't we, James?
We will be, but unfortunately, he could potentially lose, Congress or the Senate, and therefore he becomes like any other president, that no matter what he wants to do, they don't allow him to do it.
100 company CEO, and I told you before the financial results been released, and I told you sell it because the results are not good. What would you call it?
I would call that insider trading and it's criminal activity.
Exactly. We got on a super scale right now, President Trump doing that to the world market.
Not that he's going to sue, but we don't know that for a fact, of course.
No, of course we don't know, but there's evidence there. What he was doing is, if anyone knew that he's going to crash the market, they're going to open the positions like a short-term position.
Present, if you would, what you believe to be the evidence of insider trading then, Jay.
No, but if anybody knew that he's going to impose tariffs, and that's going to crash the market inevitably. There's lots of experts. But you knew it. But why he? I mean, on the day.
If you, as I said earlier, I've listened back to some videotape, as it's called, of him in the 80s. This is an economic principle in which he's believed for 30 plus years. And prior to election, he told us all tariffs is his favourite word. Why the surprise?
But the thing is, but this is a heretic. He didn't keep his word, did he? He announced the tariffs. He should have kept it for 5 years or something. But next day he changed his mind. This is a pure market manipulation. Do you remember on the 1st of in January, Elon Musk changed his name to what? On X, Cecus Maximus. Do you know that?
I think.
Yeah. And what happened to that coin? What happened to that crypto coin, meme coin?
I don't know. Questions.
Yeah. Just go have a look. Go have a look. 3,000%. It went in one day, and then he changed it.
The interview. 9:52. Nick Ferrari's asked to pause the. Sorry, go on. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I just wanted to ask you, Nick, when are you going to apologise to the nation? You got
I do
Brexit
it every day.
Wrong.
What do you want me to apologise now?
You got Brexit wrong.
No, Brexit is Brexit. I remember Boris Johnson telling me Brexit is 9 out of 10. And goodness knows he got a lot of things right.
But you got Trump wrong as well. You were backing them. And
hold on. I am going to fade you down there. I've not backed everything Donald Trump. I thought his behaviour with Zelensky was appalling. I think much of the one bits I have backed is his attempt to try and get Americans back into work. Yes, I do back that. And I do back Buy American when you can, just as we should buy British steel for the theme park in Bedfordshire. Yes.
No, but what I'm saying is the Brexit, you got it wrong, didn't you? Tories, you got it wrong.
Do we have to go back to that? I'll tell you what I got right.
Yeah, what?
Nick Rocket in the Grand National. And I did rather well on that one. So listen to me for horse bets, if not genuinely. And it's quite helpful that my fiancée is called Claire, because I was on that each way as well. So there we are. We were off to... William Hill took a hell of a beating.